I'm gonna bring. I forgot it. The part right now. That's.
She just told me, but I was
Okay.
like.
All right, class. Good morning. Let me get your attention real quick. Today we are taking the last set of notes of the week. It's going to be on mass culture of the 1950s. We're going to take notes today. We're going to have an assignment tomorrow related to what we learned primarily yesterday class, the day before on Monday. And then on Friday, that will be that makeup day, which I'm going to talk to you guys. I'll bring you guys up one by one. We're going to talk about your guys' grade, you guys can see the signs, tell me what we can do about that. So that's the plan for this week. Again, today we're going to take notes. It should fit right into our period. Take around a couple minutes left over a class. That's what we got going on. Have any questions? Class, I am recording. I forgot to let you guys know yesterday. But I am, just so you know, FYI. So again, take roll and then we'll start on the set notes. You said the notes assignment schedule, right?
It's not scheduled. You said it was.
Oh, you said assignment. Class, that notes assignment is posted, so I'm pulling that up. Get started like in a minute. That's the last set of notes of the week. Class, just on the talent shows for on 6. How you feeling? Alright class, I am going to get started, so if you have any devices, can we please put those away. Class, if you have any headphones, can you also put those away, please? I'm okay with you guys taking it out after, but that's all I am. Class, today's lesson is on mass culture in the 1950s. It's topic 7, lesson 6. So today's objectives, class, we are gonna examine the rise of the suburbs and growth of the interstate highway systems class. We're gonna explain the causes and effects of prosperities in the 1950s on consumers. We're gonna discuss post-war changes in family life. We're gonna describe changes in education in the post-war period. And then we're gonna describe the rise of new forms of mass culture class. We're gonna be talking about the growth of suburbs, the growth of highways during this time class, and changes in American life. So that's what today's lesson is gonna be about, class. First and foremost, we're going to talk about suburban growth, class. So after the war, Americans started to have families, class. What did we call that? I guess era in which a lot of people returning from the war were having babies, class. What's that called? The baby boom, yeah. And those kids are ended up called baby boomers, and they're like the fairly older people today, class. That generation is called the baby boomers, but at the time, that event is called baby boom, class. And after the war, Americans got married and had families. Class, these families needed housing. So developers had to figure out how are we gonna make houses in a hurry for all these people, all these families returning from war, class. We needed to find housing for them, class. Class, quick question. If you guys look at these images right here, do these houses look individualized what I mean by that, class, is do they all look different? Yes or no? No, right? They all kind of look the same. Class, these are what we call suburbs. Class, there was new techniques that have houses being built in weeks instead of months, class. What this emphasized is more or less creating something called model homes, class, where you would have 3 to 5 options of houses that more or less look the same, class. Class, when you guys walk around Kermit and stuff, do you guys see houses that look like your guys' house? Maybe here and there, like you guys could see, like maybe some similarities, class. This way of building, class. It made it more affordable. It made it faster for construction companies to build houses. Class, they had like a couple options. You would build these houses and then make suburbs or neighborhoods like this, class. Class, the government invested lots of money into building more affordable housing. Suburbs transformed the U.S., class. Do you have any questions about suburbs and these houses being built? Again, this was to help accommodate people coming back from war, families coming back from war, the baby boom, class. Do you have any questions? Class, there's, oh, actually something else. Class, the GI Bill, we talked about that, Mr. Guerrero talked about that on Monday, class. Remember that they gave a help to some veterans, class. It was they didn't have to put any money down, and they had 0% interest loans, class, and they had affordable payments. I kind of just talked about it, but class, what impact did the GI Bill have on Americans building homes in World War II? What were those benefits I just talked about? So what? Those stuff about the GI Bill. How did it help with housing, class? Yeah, very low interest rates. I'll talk about that. Affordable for the people turning back. Class, the next slide talks about interstate highways, class. Class, President Eisenhower authorized the first funding of the interstate highway system. He called the Interstate Highway Act in 1956, class. 41,000 miles of highways were built at this time, class. Eisenhower stated that it would lead to an economic growth and valuable transportation, class. Class, when there's a highway, it's easier to transport around the country, class. Think about it. Americans were now able to go to different beaches, to Las Vegas, to Disneyland, class. Who knows the highway that takes you all the way down, all the way to Mexico? What is that? What's that highway called? It's like towards Pasadena. It's on that side. You could also take the 99 to get the 5. I see a lot of you guys saying the 5. Yes. An example could be the 5, class. The 5 could take you all the way down to LA, all the way down to San Diego, class. I even think it passes by Disneyland. Class, there are highways that take you to Las Vegas, different highways that take you to different beaches. Class, this just makes everything more efficient, class. People are able to travel faster, class. Another reason, if you guys look at this image right here, another reason highways were being created around this time, class, is because we were in the Cold War. We were fearful of another war. We needed a faster way to transport our materials, class. That's another reason why the highways were being created. Class, with suburban growth and highways in the 50s, Americans relied more on cars. More people started buying cars around this time. Again, there was highways, class. There were people wanted to travel. More people could afford cars. It was a prosperous time, class. Class, has anybody been to a drive-in movie theater here? No? We do have one in Madera. I recommend. I've only been once, like 5 years ago. It was really fun. Drive-in movie theaters were huge around this time. Again, car culture. There was highways. People were vacationing. Class. People had cars. It was more affordable. You see the inventions of also fast food. Class. Before that, you would see more people just eat inside of a restaurant. During this time, class, there was inventions of drive-throughs, of drive-through movie theaters. Class. Just stuff like that. Class. Do we have any questions? Okay, that is the same. Oh, I did have a discussion question for you guys. Class, how did car culture and the interstate highway system benefit Americans? What were Americans able to do because of the highways? Yeah, travel faster. I would also mention drive-in movie theaters, fast food restaurants, car culture. Okay, so free enterprise systems improve the standard of living. Class, I just talked about the 50s were a great time to live. People just came back from war, people were having babies, people were getting jobs. Class, the income was doubling. Class, Americans had more money to spend in the 50s. During the 1950s, the median income rose from $3,319 to $5,000. Class, that's a 40% increase. Again, let me repeat that. Class, the income from families rose from $3,000 to $5,000. Class, that is close to a 40%, almost half increase. Class, consumer-oriented companies found a new way to get Americans to buy goods on credit. Class, we've talked about installment buying before in this class. We had slogans like buy now, pay later. Again, we've talked about credit. Class. What I want you guys to retain from this slide is that this was a very prosperous time. Class, and during the 50s, the median income of families rose from $3,000 to $5,000. Class, that's kind of crazy now. I mean, it's hard to live off that now. Class, the closest comparison I can make it to is that if a family making $60,000 today would be making like $100,000. Again, this is a very prosperous time, the 1950s. People were living pretty well off with cars, highway systems, inventions. Class, this was a good time to live in America. Do we have any questions? Class, this is a chart of the median family income. Class, just talks about what I talked about. This turquoise one is from 1947. This purple one's from 1970. Class, we see that people making over 10,000 and over per year. Class, there was a lot more people. Again, this just talks about the median family income. People were living well during the 1950s. It was a good time. Class, the next slide. Technological innovations drive new conveniences. Class, embracing free enterprise businesses developed technological and purchased innovations that impacted the standard of living for Americans. Class, during around this time, you've seen inventions like home appliances. We've seen washing machines being created. We've seen dryers being created, fridges being created. Class, beforehand, before we had a washing machine, I didn't think we had to wash our clothes individually. Class, whenever I go to Mexico, I visit my grandma over there. She has like I don't even know what to call it, but it has like ridges, and she gets like soap, like actual bar soap, and she would like get the piece of clothing, she rub it on it, and then she like, I don't know, it has like ridges, I don't know the name of it, but that's how you would wash clothes back in. Class. It'd be an individual process, it'll take a long time. Class. Inventions such as the washing machine and the dryer. Class, made everything more efficient. Class. If you guys look at this image right here, around this time, appliances were being sold in color. Class, women were more likely to buy a product if it was pink, they like the colors. There was different colors. Class, around this time, you've seen like pink washing machines, pink dryers. Class, these are ways companies will try to influence people to buy stuff. Again, washing machines were created, dryers were created, refrigerators. Class, back then, before we had refrigerators, they would get like a big block of ice, and they would get like kind of like what we know as an ice chest today. You would have your food, and then you would have to buy a different block of ice every time you went out. Class. So that's what was around this time. Class, with more money and easier credit, with credit buying, Americans were able to have buying sprees. Class, You also saw the inventions of a lot of shopping centers, class, like malls. We see shopping centers being created around this time. Again, Americans had more money to spend, class. Also, last point on this slide, Americans bought TVs in record numbers, class. TVs were invented like 10 years prior. However, most people could not afford them at this time. At that time, now people could, class. By 1953, Americans had purchased 7 million TV sets, class. By the end of the 1950s, 90% of American households had a TV, class. This is very important. People were now able to be, could watch the same programs, watch the same news channels. Class, can we guess how many channels there were at the time? In the 1950s, what do we think? It's in one hand. That's the hint of it. 4, 3. Because I think it's ABC, NBC, NBC and ABC. I forgot that. Point is, there's 3 channels, class. Most people watch the same things. It isn't like today where we have Netflix, HBO, all these options of watch. There's so many options that we don't even know what to watch. Back then, pretty much everybody watched the same things. Again, there was 3 channels, class. People kind of watched the news, other events such as that, class. That was a different time to where we are now. We have a million options. Class, do we have any questions on this slide? Again, these inventions at this time made life easier for Americans. Class, like I said, the washing machine, dryer, refrigerators, shopping centers are being created. People had more money, class, and Americans were starting to get TVs. Actually, I did have a question before that. Class, a discussion question. What were some reasons why consumption skyrocketed in the post-war era? Class, what did Americans have more during this time? Money. Yeah. Incomes are rising, class. Americans had more money to spend. Goods were increasingly available on credit. Also, I mentioned credit. Buy now, buy now, pay later, class. Just mention credit money. Okay, class. Families' specific needs lead to medical innovations. So I talked about some technological innovations, like the washer and dryer and etc. class. Now we're going to talk about some medical innovations. Class, during the 1950s, Americans benefited from numerous medical advancements, class. Class, who was our president that had polio? Died of a heart attack. What was his name? Just talked about him all that time, he was in a wheelchair. FDR. Class, during the 1950s, a vaccine for polio was developed. The person who invented this, his name was Jonas Salk, Dr. Jonas Salk. Class, the powerful antibiotics, penicillin, became widely available, class. We've seen more inventions, class. We've seen better medical accessibility, class. Children born after 1946 had a better life expectancy than children born after 1946, class. Again, kids and people had a better life expectancy in the 1950s than before, class. What I find interesting today, I think we're like the first generation, because of our bad health, that our life expectancy is not. We don't know if it's going to be better. Every single generation before this one, we know that it's been better, the life expectancy. This new generation, class, I've watched this on the news myself. We don't even know if we're going to outlive our, not to scare you guys, but it's kind of interesting fact. Class, something else was created around this time, the CDC, 1946, this disease center. I know they were big on COVID. The CDC, they were all over the place. Class, do we have any questions on this slide? Again, last slide I talked about innovations in technology. On this one I talked about inventions with medical innovations. Questions? Class, education becomes more accessible. Class, after World War II, there was a movement in the US for a more focus on education, class. Who was our rival during the 1950s and throughout the 60s? Class, we talked about it last week. The Soviet Union, yes. Class, we were in competition with the Soviet Union. Remember I talked about last week, there was a lesson where we spent money on developing better teachers, better students, with an emphasis on science, class. Around this time as well, we had something called the California Master Plan, class. It funded research universities, state colleges, and community colleges, class. We wanted to be smarter than the Russians. We were in a competition with the Russians. Remember I said we were in a competition scientifically, economically, class politically. This was a competition time of competition with the Soviet Union, class. Again, the California Master Plan sent money to research universities, state colleges, and community colleges. Class, on this image right here on the left, that is a local, it's a local former university that's now a college. What do you guys think? It's in the valley. What school do we think that is? This one right here on the left. It's local, it's like in the valley. Just take a wild guess. Fresno State? Kinda, you're not wrong. So this is Fresno City today. However, if you go to Fresno City, they'll tell you this. Fresno City used to be Fresno State. And then they built a new campus, so now what Fresno State is Fresno State. But originally Fresno City used to be Fresno State, and now it's Fresno City. So that's why you're kind of both right. If you say Fresno City, you're not wrong. You know, Fresno State, you're not wrong. But yeah, that is Fresno City today, and it used to be Fresno State. Class, do we have any questions? Last point, and this is going to be very important next week, class. Something called Brown versus Board of Education was passed in 1954. Class, this is more related to the civil rights movement. What this did, Brown v. Board, class, it determined that segregation in schools was unconstitutional. Class, do you remember what segregation is? What is that? Yeah. Well, yeah. So it made it seem that after Brown v. Board of Education, it determined that segregation in schools were unconstitutional. So people were mixed in. Students were mixed in. Do we have any questions? Class, I did have a discussion question for you guys. How did American educational priorities change in the following years of World War II? Class, what was the government doing? What were they doing? Ethan? Exactly, they were putting money into education. Again, a prime example of this is the California Master Plan, where they were funding universities, state colleges, community colleges. We wanted to fund the education service, class. Good job. Class, television. So television shapes American culture. We kind of talked about 90% of Americans by the end of the 1950s having a television, class. Between 1945 and 1960s, Americans bought TVs faster than they had bought radios during the 1920s. So remember in the 1920s how lots of people bought radios. The same thing happened, class, but I'd say even on a much more rapid pace. Class, TV had a big influence on Americans' children's lives. Class, what kids were watching around this time, they were watching Howdy Doody, the Howdy Doody show, the Mickey Mouse Club, different types of cartoons, different types of superhero shows. Class, the Lone Ranger. I know we talked about that movie before. Class, 50 million Americans tuned in each week to watch I Love Lucy. Has anybody heard of that show, I Love Lucy? It's like a black and gray show. Like I think the husband will say Lucy all the time. Doesn't ring a bell. I never really watched it either. I just remember my grandma having it in the background. Class, shows of the 1950s reflected and reinforced the ideals of a 1950s family. Class, a mass culture had begun to develop in the 1950s. Class, there was nationally broadcast radios. There was Hollywood films. Class, TV sped this up. Again, around this time, class, there was only a handful of channels. Some of the most famous shows, I Love Lucy, had like millions of viewers. Everybody kind of watched the same thing around this time. There wasn't as much options as we have today. I know today I have a hard time watching anything because I'm like, what do I even start with? I have like 5 streaming apps that I don't even know what to watch. Do you have any questions there? Yeah, TV a big invention at this time. Well, not an invention, it's just more accessibility. I think that was the last slide, yeah. Class, that is the last slide. Again, just to recap today's lesson, class, I went over the creation of suburbs, class, how it was more efficient, how we needed housing because of the baby boom, class. There were families returning home from war. People needed housing. There was a more efficient method of creating housing, class. These are the suburbs. Class, I also went over I went over interstate support of migration and prosperity class. I talked about the Interstate Highway Act, how 41,000 miles of highways were built, how we were able to travel via highway to, places such as Disneyland, Las Vegas, all the way down to San Diego class. The highways were invented around this time. A car culture class in which there were drive-throughs, in which there were drive-in movie theaters class. Again, Americans were able to move throughout the country in a much faster pace. Class, I went over the enterprise system and the standard of living. Again, Americans were living a good time in the 50s. They had more money to spend. The income nearly doubled. Class, a 40% increase. Well, I should say it was a 40% increase. Class with installment buying or buy now, pay later. Class, I went over how by the end of the 1950s, 90% of households owned a TV. And I went over medical innovations such as penicillin, such as the polio vaccine class. I went over education, how that became more accessible, how the Brown v. Board of Education ended segregations in school, and lastly, I went over how television shaped American culture. Class, do we have any questions on today's lesson? Class, we still have plenty of time here left in class. You guys have the rest of the time. Finish that notes assignment, finish some missing work, have something out, class. Again, on Friday, I'll be talking to you guys individually to kind of check up on your guys' grades and missing assignments. Do we have any questions on today's lesson or anything else? Again, finish that notes assignment, class, from yesterday or today. Let me know if you have questions.